But I mean, basically the rationale for the workshop today is I've been going through this book, Small Teaching Online, which, as I'll talk about, is kind of a direct outgrowth of Small Teaching, which has been out for a number of years, and maybe some of you are already familiar with the Small Teaching text. But I do want to say a little bit about all of that. Before we get into those aspects of the conversation, though, I thought rather than just introductions, I thought a good way to kick off our conversation this afternoon would be for at least those of us who want to talk a little bit about maybe one of our classes for the fall, and what some of the issues or things you're thinking about for that class, and how it might be different given the kind of weird year we're going into. So I mean, I'll kick it off. I'm only doing one course this fall. I'm doing my Search for Life in the Universe course. I'll have 60 plus students in it. It's actually officially is an online course. I don't think any of you are actually teaching officially online. You're probably teaching remote instruction courses, but not technically online courses. So with my Life in the Universe course, because it is online, there is no scheduled meeting time. It's not like I'm taking my face-to-face course and having to do it remotely. So it's designed from the get-go to be fully functional in a totally asynchronous combination of learning activities and resources. I'll be doing some synchronous things, but can't require them. I guess some of the things I'm thinking about is how I can step up my game to better present my instructor presence in the course. I mean, I've worked on this in the past, but it's something I want to make sure that the students really know, since they're in a fully online course, that I'm there and helping to facilitate their learning. So, I mean, that's one course that I'm doing. If anyone else wants to, talk about a course that they're doing for the fall, I will put on my instructor hat and I will go silent until somebody breaks. Yeah, Casey, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Casey.
Am I audible now?
You're audible now.
Okay, great. I'm teaching 3 philosophy courses this fall. Ideas of Good and Evil, which is an intro class, Philosophy of the Environment, and Philosophy of Art. And this will be my first entire semester of remote teaching. I'm still struggling to get up to speed with just basics of Zoom, even though I did, the emergency version we all did last spring. And I guess one challenge that I will face, that is common to all of these philosophy courses, I think it's just part of teaching in this subject area, is the challenge of being able to have a real-time conversation with, in my case, not a really large group of students, probably 20-ish, 20 to 25-ish, in such a way that I'm able to strike a balance between my, offering, some version of what used to be called a lecture, in a certain part of the class, but also really building a lot more opportunities than I have done in earlier teaching into the structure of the sessions for student interaction. And in a way, this is just a basic point that everybody has been thinking about before. But I guess I'll focus it just a wee bit more by saying that as I'm gradually learning the specifics of Zoom, I'm coming to appreciate the use of breakout sessions, which I think a lot of you are, much more experienced in. And I know Keith has been, showing us a lot about this kind of stuff too. And what I'd like to learn more about, I guess this falls under the heading of small teaching in some way. I'd like to get a further sense of how to strike a balance between my preserving some version of the lecturer role for maybe a reduced part of the session, and then doing as much as possible based on what we actually know about how undergraduates pay attention or don't, how they come to feel confident in conversation or not, build as many opportunities as possible into sessions that will take advantage of the interactivity of breakout sessions. And I guess I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are some things we can talk about. I'm not sure that I had them in my notes, but in terms of, you know, synchronous versus asynchronous lecture, and clearly how to spend more of your together time with students actively engaged. Anyone else want to talk about it? Yeah, Liz, go ahead.
Everyone. I'm teaching biochemistry and a non-majors science class in the fall. One of them I've actually taught fully remotely before, or fully online before, so doing that
Yeah.
one remotely shouldn't be too challenging. It's the kind of equivalent of Pete's class. And biochem, I'm hoping to do sort of a flipped classroom, but still online. So I guess in synchronous, asynchronous terms,
Yeah.
it would be record the lectures so they can watch them asynchronously, but then also meet synchronously to go over the lectures and take questions and do group work and hopefully make good use of those breakout rooms that you mentioned, Casey. I've only been on the receiving end of those, but I think it has a lot of potential benefits. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and that flipped classroom approach that you're talking about, Liz, is actually, Casey, something I would recommend to you as well. I mean, that gives you, by doing at least some of the lecturing as asynchronous lectures that you record ahead of time and have ways of making sure that the students actually go through them. You still maintain your presence as the lecturer in the course, but that frees up more time for the kind of interactive breakout room kind of sessions that you were talking about. And they're actually, one of the areas I did want to talk about from the small teaching text really does focus a lot on, low threshold ways to incorporate video recordings into our classes. So try to make sure that we get back to that as we go through the conversation. Yeah, Iris?
Hi, everyone. I'm teaching 3 sections of the same course, which is Edit 1 in the BFA Conservatory. And so I've been planning on doing, as I did last spring, some asynchronous showing of clips and examples to go with, I guess you'd call it lecture, but explanation of theoretical principles of editing. And then I guess about a quarter to a third of the course is students actually learning the Avid technology and then learning the theory of editing through the practical hands-on. So I guess I'm trying to figure out whether I should, and they're about 12 in each section. There's all the fresh class, so we've got the built-in of trying to build camaraderie for an incoming group. All sorts of wrinkles.
Yeah.
Some of them are living, we don't know exactly how many, but probably 2/3 are residential students on campus, and 5 to 6 or more may be remote, totally remote, not in the labs. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out the balance
Yeah.
of if I should be doing Zooms of 5 students each when I'm doing synchronous and breaking the 3-hour time block into halves so I can, all sorts of.
Yeah, so you've got a number of the issues that faculty dealt with in the spring. How do you keep students engaged for a 3-hour Zoom session, right? And you didn't actually redo the scheduling for the fall to.
I think I'm experimenting with breaking them into 2 groups.
Yeah.
So they're like 5 or 6 each, and having a lot of the course material delivered in asynchronous talk, and screening. But also, how should they best upload their? Usually in that class, we work hands-on with each of their timelines, and we actually. Usually I'm over their shoulder, touching buttons, but that doesn't seem good in COVID. So it might be better to do this remotely and share screen, but it's yeah. I'm listening to everybody's solutions and I'm thinking, I could apply that maybe.
Yeah, so you're dealing with one of the minority of courses that probably have a socially distant face-to-face component,
Yes.
right? And how to balance that with doing things in Zoom. And I mean, if you did try to do your lab in Zoom and by having students share their screen, theoretically you could do that. The issues you'd have to deal with, of course, would be do the students have the software on their computers,
Hmm.
or are they going to have to do Zoom from the computer lab while you're somewhere else? Or
And processing power for some of the, yeah, it gets interesting.
yeah,
But I think that these are questions um, that we face in the spring. I'm just not sure I did it well.
yeah. So I mean, we won't necessarily get to all these challenges within the kind of small teaching framework, but let's continue to have a conversation about some of your issues, Iris, as we go forward.
Thanks.
I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in, or yeah, Ellen, I
Yeah,
think you're muted.
I
Yeah.
think I'm muted and I think I wasn't before, so I apologize. Nice to see everyone. And I also just want to say I have to jump off a little bit early, so I hope to get the video later and watch the end, but it's nice to be here. I teach college writing. I'm teaching 2 sections. There are 20 students in each section right now. And I mean, the reason I signed up for this today, Keith, I remember when we did a book group around small teaching years ago. And so when I saw that there was small teaching online, I bought it immediately. So I have also been reading
Oh, good.
this summer. I read it, I don't know, about halfway through, and then I've just been skimming other sections. And so I was really interested in, what stood out to you. I think I follow his writing on Chronicle, and I just think it's great in so many ways. My two things that I'm interested in, one that this session may be relevant for or not, and the other, which you just mentioned, which is really what I need most, I think. So the two things, one is just I'm trying to struggle with kind of redoing my Moodle site, not redoing it, but doing it in a different way than I have before, because I feel like I need to get more on it, but I need it to visually look like less. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do that. And actually the collapsible weeks is
Yeah.
something of a help.
Liz was very excited when she found out in her previous workshop that we had actually installed that. So yeah.
That's
Been waiting for it for months.
It's fantastic. It's a big progress. Thank you for that. And the other is exactly what you said, what did you call it? Low threshold videos, like making so I'm going to Zoom, I've decided, every class. I found in the spring that the writers that I worked with really appreciated coming together each week, but the full class time is way too much. So what I'm planning to do most weeks, there are some exceptions, is to do like a 50 to 60 minute Zoom, including breakout groups in most sessions. And I would stay on afterwards for questions and to, continue whatever things students want to talk about. And then the rest they're doing on their own in between. But to supplement some of what I would ordinarily do in class, I would like to do like short 4 and 5 minute videos for some of the information that, you get to do when you're meeting with students in person. But if I put it all in writing, I don't, and I'll do a written version too, but I think if I create some short videos about, important topics, that it will be paid attention to in a different
Right. Okay.
I feel timid about it. I did meet with Marie, who was fabulous, who suggested using VoiceThread to record the videos.
Yep. So, I mean, video has come up a lot. Maybe I'll just throw my notes out the window and, deal with what you actually want to talk about. I do want to say For those of you who aren't familiar with the small teaching text, I highly recommend it. And part of the reason for me doing the workshop around this is that I'm reading this, and other than Ellen, not many of you probably have the time to, or even Ellen, I think, probably doesn't have the time to really run out and pour through a text. So the reason for doing this workshop is that while I'm reading through this, maybe I can facilitate a conversation around it. Basically, small teaching is pretty much the same thing, only one step further removed. It's probably 3 or 4 years out at this point, but basically what James Lang did was, well, he can look through, and there's a lot of, there's decades worth of very exciting and interesting work about, actually the cognitive psychology of how people learn. And clearly, all of that literature has a big bearing on what we could do in the classroom, but how many of us have a time to actually go through the literature on learning theory and cognitive psychology and pull out, all of the key principles. So that's what small teaching is. It's one of several books that have come out, like Minds Online and Make It Stick, and some other texts like that that try to take the literature on how people learn and apply it to our classes. So what's kind of unique about small teaching is it's to do that in a way that doesn't overwhelm us as instructors. So each of the chapters has kind of a background on learning theory, and then talks about small, easy ways that we can take those principles into our classes. And I won't go into it as much as I had planned in my notes, but each chapter has that background on a particular area. Models about how you can incorporate it without redoing your whole course, because how many of us have time in the middle of August to sit down and redo all of our courses, right? So what are small ways that we can take advantage of this? Some tips, some general principles, a summary of the general principles, and so forth. Just the contents for the small teaching. There's a chapter on retrieval practice. It's called Retrieving. There's Predicting, Interleaving, basically pulling out some of these key principles from learning theory. And I think if I were going to pull out anything from the small teaching text, it would be the key importance of retrieval practice for our students learning anything, right? I talk with my students in my classes and about how they study, and it's amazing to me how oftentimes I hear, well, I read the assignments, which we like to hear, right? And I reread the assignments, and I take notes in lecture, and I highlight, and I have to kind of tell them that what you're doing has decades of research showing that it's a very ineffective way to learn. You can't really learn materials by reading the chapter over and over and over again. The whole key point about retrieval practice is the way that what really consolidates students' learning is when they actually have to retrieve and work on that knowledge that they have read about or heard about in the lecture, or however the content's getting across. And so, just thinking about your courses, what are ways that you require students to actually retrieve them and work on and process the information that is the subject for their courses? Yeah, Liz.
I give them a lot of worksheets for practice that they can do on their own, and I give them the answers. So it's basically ungraded homework. And I encourage them to work with each other on that. And I make as much of the live class time as possible focused on practice and retrieval too. So, I'll basically make up slides that are half empty that we'll go through together, where I'm asking them to fill in the missing pieces from what they saw in the videos. And then I'll give them more practice problems, and I've started using the Zoom polls too.
Yeah. Yeah, Ando.
I use kind of two ways, one short term and another one kind of longer term. For the short term, I give them, I do flipped class as well. So I give, by the way, I teach French, beginning French, yes, first semester and second semester. So for the short term, I give them the grammar part for them to practice and do exercise at home. It's lightly graded. And then maybe 2 or 3 sessions later, we're using that grammar in practice for real life, like giving someone's names or describing something and things like that. So my hope is that it sticks, since it goes a long way, a little bit. They go back and then, oh, we learned about that a week ago or so.
Right. So actually that brings up a couple of things. I have, for the last several years, had the practice of, well, I'm assigning readings. How am I get students to actually do the readings? So I do a lot of low stakes online quizzes in Moodle. And, I'll have a chapter on, say, igneous rock processes that they have had to read. I'll write up a question bank with 30, 40 questions, and then do short quizzes in Moodle where every time they take a quiz, they get a different random set of 10 questions from that bank. And I give them oftentimes 5, 6, 7 times to retake the quiz as much as they want. I figure the more they're taking the quizzes, the more they're retrieving information that they have read, the more they're applying it, and the more time they're spending on tasks. I wouldn't necessarily call what I do with the low stakes quizzes small teaching, because it's a lot of work for me to write up all of those Moodle quizzes. But it is one way that you can incorporate that kind of retrieval practice. And certainly it works when I teach face-to-face, but when I'm teaching online and I want to make students actually, work through the readings, or if I'm doing a remote instruction class, it's the same kind of thing. But there are some lower threshold ways that you can do retrieval practice. How many of you have how many of you oftentimes start your class by asking about something that you covered in the previous class? I mean, Ando just mentioned something along that line. When you're doing that, you're basically doing retrieval practice. You're getting them to think back and to come up again. How many of you maybe end up your class with, it's a fairly common classroom assessment technique is to take the last 5 minutes and have them jot down, what was the main point for today? What was your muddiest point? What was the thing that you found most confusing? And if you've got a long Zoom session and you're thinking about, well, how am I actually going to productively engage students in this long Zoom session for my remote instruction situation, clearly carve out some time at the end to get students to reflect back on the session. What were the main points? You could have a quick little assignment activity in Moodle that's just online text format, and you say, okay, well, we finished up with what I want us to cover for this evening or for today. Here, I'm putting into the Zoom chat, here's a link to the Moodle assignment that I've set up, where I want you to just go in and take 5 minutes to think about, what were the main points from today? What did you find confusing? You can make this a graded assignment or not. Maybe you don't even make it a graded assignment, but you just require them to do it. That gives you the ability to look through their responses, and then maybe at the beginning of the next Zoom session, you can say, well, I mean, looking over what you all posted at the end of our last Zoom session, I think we need to maybe take a few minutes to talk about these concepts where there seemed to be a lot of confusion with the class. So that kind of formative feedback gives you a lot of useful information for fine-tuning, retooling how you're going to handle the next sessions. And it gets them to think back about, you know, what they just covered an hour ago or 45 minutes ago. And that kind of retrieval will help to cement what you covered in that Zoom session, because you're forcing them to think back on it. Yeah, Ellen.
I love that idea. I did not. I used to always in the classroom use like exit tickets for that
Yeah.
kind of thing, and I did not use the forum in that way last semester, but I am going to do it this semester. But I did start at the very end using the chat. That was even more
Okay.
of a kind of low threshold, low stakes way, and also it was what I did is I would have students in the very beginning respond to something in the chat from the reading, and I used that as kind of a, not a quiz,
Yep.
but a check. I didn't grade it, but what I did say is that I was going to use the chat script to just double check attendance to make sure, and that those entries would be the attendance, and I did it at the beginning, and then I did a similar kind of thing. You know, I would pose a question, or what was the most important thing you learned today, and what was the least important, or what was confusing. I like that at the end.
Yep.
And I found that kind of encouraged staying on the whole time. I think shortening the session will help, but I did find that some students joined late, and some of it was technology and all of the other things going on, but some students had fatigue factor from Zoom, which I totally get. And so
Yeah.
using the chat really helped them to kind of stay engaged. And also I found that they actually really like seeing what their fellow writers were saying there. Whereas with the exit tickets, I would sometimes type up interesting things and send it out, and they were interested, but not in the same way as just seeing it in real time right there, what other
Right.
people found
Yeah.
important.
So just a couple of things that I would point out. If you're not aware, the Zoom accounts we get from the college they do actually have an attendance report that you can pull out of the Zoom reports. And it will tell you, especially if you if you set up your Zoom sessions through your Moodle course, through the Moodle Zoom integration, and Moodle is passing, you know, the first name and last name and account information for your students into the Zoom session, you have a very clear list of who attended. This attendance report in Zoom will tell you what time did they join, what time did they leave. So if you do have some students joining late, it's part of the report. If you have a student who drops out from some technical reason, comes back on, it will tell you when they joined, when they left, when they joined, when they left, when they joined, when they left. So there's that, but it doesn't get at what you were talking about, Ellen, in terms of their engagement. So having also these kinds of activities in the chat, you can help make sure that they do stay engaged across the session.
Yeah, I just found the chat was great. Students were reading it, they liked writing in it, and some students would write often when they wouldn't want to like raise their hand and actually speak, and it was almost like having kind of a built-in Twitter, having the chat.
So do you advise, do you prefer then that it is made as a class, that the whole class see who writes what, or which?
Well, I mean, if you do this, what was the main point? What was the muddiest point? That's that's what you're wanting to do, then you have the question, well, what tool do I want to do that through? So again, I mean, part of, chapter 3 in the Small Teaching Online really does go into how to select the tools and media that will support your courses and how to do that in kind of low threshold ways. If you use the chat in Zoom, as Ellen did, then clearly it's visible to everyone in the class. But it's immediate. They're already in Zoom. You don't have to send them anywhere. If you do what I threw out as an option, you set up a low stakes or ungraded assignment in Moodle, put the link into the Zoom chat, say, okay, for the rest of our time, I want you to go off individually and click on this link. It'll take you into our Zoom class, into this assignment, and just respond to whatever reflection prompt. It could be the kind of standard, what was the main point? What was the muddiest point kind of, that's a fairly common kind of exit questions that you can use to get students. But some weeks you might want to have different kinds of reflections. Maybe after a particular session, you want to direct everyone to go into a Moodle assignment and say, I want you to think about how what we talked about today relates to what we talked about 3 weeks ago. Because that actually reflects back on the interleaving section in the Small Teaching book. It's fairly clear that if students do interleaved practice of the course materials rather than massed practice, where they are working on some set of materials and then they spend some time working on other set of materials and then come back to the first set of materials. If students do that kind of spaced out work on the course, even if they don't do any more than what they do in a concentrated session, studies show that they learn better with spaced out practice than with mass practice. That's why cramming for an exam is not really an effective strategy. You might get them through the exam, but they don't learn anything. So that kind of, I want you to reflect back on what we talked about 3 weeks ago, kind of is one way of looking at that interleaving process and getting them to, and also developing connections and continuity, which is connecting is, chapter 4 in the Small Teaching text. Jennifer.
So I teach at 2 different places. I teach at WCC Art History Survey too,
Yep.
in smaller classes. The largest class is about 20-something students. And then at Purchase, I'm co-teaching a class called Discovering the Arts, which is 165
Right.
students. And I'm teaching that with about 4 other people. So just to bring it back, one strategy I've used in my smaller classes in person, and I think what I'll do is I'll try to use it in Zoom using the whiteboard as like a kind of a graffiti wall, is this reflection tool called KWL, which is Know, Want to Know, Learned. So in the beginning of the class, you ask the students to write what they know about the subject. So hopefully they've done the reading and they know something about this topic you're going to talk about the day before, and then they'll put what they want to know, maybe like the muddiest point, what wasn't clear to them from that reading. And then so then you go over it in the beginning of the class as a group. And then at the end of class, they go and write down, I use Post-its in the class. They write down what they've learned, and then we reflect on that as well. So I'll try to possibly use the whiteboard as a collaborative tool. But for the 165 person class, so one of the things that I've had to do is that we're changing our objectives, right? So that the goal of the class is for them not to remember who wrote I don't know, whatever the book is, Moby Dick.
Right.
But to learn how to look at the material critically, so that in all material, art material, whatever's presented to them in a critical way, and be able to write about it critically. So the entire class is this kind of constant reflection, reiteration, retrieval process. Because, and we are going to be using a lot of, they're going to be workshopping some of their critical writing in breakout sections. I think Zoom allows up to 50. So we're going to utilize that, and I don't think even 4 of us are going to get to all of the 50. No. And we're certainly, when they come back to share back, we're going to ask them to share back. We probably won't get to everybody, but these are the things that these are some of the tools that we're using, that I use, and that we're using.
Yeah. I mean, you could set up Google Docs for each of the breakout rooms and give them that that link, so that you know, as they're working together in the breakout room and brainstorming or workshopping or whatever, you're capturing that in the Google Doc. So yeah, you can bring them back and maybe have some of the breakout rooms do a reporting back to the large group, but you're probably not going to have that many. You know, all of those breakout rooms that you're talking about report back when you come back together. So some other way of capturing, you know, what the groups have done would be useful.
I just add,
Yeah.
I love that idea of using the whiteboard for that. And the KWL I have used also, and I do sometimes in my 3rd unit of study, which is a researched essay. And I add one thing which really, it's now 4 categories, and that is, it's like what I know, what I think I know, what I want, and then what I want to find out. So that what I think I know helps to lead them to the research too, in a different way than like what I wonder. And it's very interesting to see like the conversations that students have in groups about when they say, well, I know this, but maybe I know this, but I'm not sure. Yeah. And it's a nice, interesting addition.
Yeah, it gets them to think metacognitively about their understanding. But what you brought reminded me of two things I wanted to mention on Jennifer's comment, in that yeah, I'm all for reflective learning. I've done workshops on reflective learning, and the more we can get students to reflect on their learning, the better. I like the KWL. Another kind of framework that is very easy to structure reflection around is the what, so what, now what kind of framework. So what did we do? What was the experience? What did we cover? Or especially if you're having them reflect on actual experiential learning, what did we do? What was the experience like? And then the so what is, getting them to think about the significance, or how what they experience ties into, other aspects of their programming. And then I like the now what, because that gets them future thinking. Okay, I've had this experience. Say we are talking about service learning or some kind of other experiential learning. I've had this experience. What did it mean? Now, based on that, what am I going to do going forward? How is this going to change, my direction as a scholar, or the things that I'm invested in? One technical issue, I like the idea of using the whiteboard in Zoom, because you're already in Zoom and it's a tool that's there. If you're having them do whiteboard stuff at the beginning, and you can certainly save that out in Zoom as an image capture. I don't know if you then stop sharing and have your Zoom session and maybe do some screen sharing and so forth, and come back to the whiteboard later, if that whiteboard from the beginning of the session is going to be there for you at the end of the session to add to, or if that's necessary.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be.
Okay.
because at that point we will have gone over what they what they know and what they
Okay.
want to know.
So I'm just jumping around. It's a good thing I didn't put a Google Doc of notes up for you to have, because we're just going wherever we want to go. But
Keith,
yeah,
before you move forward, what does the KWL stand for?
that was Jennifer and Ellen. It was know. I mean, what was it again? Know, what, and learn, right?
Want, learn.
Yeah,
What
what
No.
you, right. Know
what
what you
I
want
know,
to know.
what I want to. Yeah.
Oh, know what you want to learn. Thank
No.
you.
What do I know? What do I want to learn?
And then at the end of the class, it's what have you learned?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, so I actually, because I'm an overachiever, I bought both books.
Okay.
And I started with the small teaching, not the one online. Is it necessary, or should I just go for the teaching online? And
No, I mean, they are. It's an interesting story. You know, after Lang came out with small teaching, of course, he went on the circuit. You know, like SUNY Oswego. The reason why we did the book club, however many years ago it was, is because SUNY Oswego brought him in to talk about it, and they were doing their book club, and we were kind of trying to collaborate. But he was doing his presentation. Northern Arizona University brought him in, and Flower Darby basically is a long-term educational developer, instructional designer, and adjunct faculty at Northern Arizona University. And after his kind of day-long workshop with the faculty at Northern Arizona, she came up to him and said, I want to write with you a small teaching online that will, you know, take this basic thing and apply it to online learning. And you know, she didn't know him. She said, "This is great. I want to work with you on basically the follow up." And he said, "Yeah." And so that's the genesis of the small teaching online. They have similar kind of structure in terms of, you know, what's the theoretical background. With small teaching online, it's not quite as a deep dive into the cognitive psychology theory. It's more, I mean, like the first chapter in small teaching online is all about surfacing the backwards course design that we use for designing our online courses. And I mean, backwards course design, is that a concept that most of you are familiar with? I mean, it's basically, when I started out as a faculty member, I did basically forward course design. I said, I was told, okay, you're teaching freshman zoology. Here's the textbook. Here's the content the textbook covers. Figure out how to lecture interestingly about it. Then figure out, you know, what papers and exams you're going to have. And only at the end worry about, well, did the students actually learn anything? You know, with backwards course design, it is, you know, the focus is on, well, what are the outcomes? What are the learning outcomes that the students should accomplish in my course here? You know, it is, you know, in Iris's course, there's specific outcomes about learning how to use Avid to, you know, create as a tool, learning, you know, different theories about, you know, film composition, I'm sure, probably, you know, whatever those outcomes are. And then from that, you can say, well, okay, then how am I going to assess whether students actually meet those outcomes? Then what learning activities do they need to do to be able to, you know, demonstrate their proficiency with those assessments? And only then do you worry about, well, what kind of resources do they need? Do they need a textbook? Do they not need a textbook, and so forth? So that backwards course design is what, whenever I'm working with a faculty or a group of faculty on course design, we always, you know, kind of start there. Our students are starting here. Where do we want them to get? And what do they need to be able to get there? And what kind of activities, what kind of assessments? So the first chapter in here is, you know, the idea that well, if we're going to do that, we ought to make it clear to the students how our courses are designed in that way. And I'm not sure why I got off onto that tangent. I'm not sure where I was going with it, but I mean, it's something you should think about. You know, how can, especially, certainly for an online course like mine, it's important to be able, for students to be able to know, well, what's the rationale for, why am I reading this? Why am I doing this? And so forth. So, you know, making that design more relevant, more apparent to our students. Why, how does this assignment that I'm working on fit in with and prepare me to accomplish what I need to accomplish in the course? Okay. So we spend a lot of time designing our courses. I'm not sure we necessarily spend a lot of time explaining to our students why our courses are the way they are. And I'm trying to do that more with my courses these days, so that students can understand and to the extent possible maybe even involve students in some of the aspects of the design, so that you kind of democratize the class a little bit. Um, so you know, I guess Jennifer was talking about why do you need to do one versus the other. Um, you know, the small teaching text is really how can we take principles from learning theory and apply it to our courses. In the case of, you know, the small teaching online, because Darby comes from a more of an instructional designer, educational developer kind of perspective, it's less hardcore learning theory, and it's more, you know, what are best practices for designing online courses. And so, you know, for those of you who don't have, there's the first 3 chapters are all about designing course. Where the first one is, you know, why you would surface your backwards design. Second chapter is about guiding learning through engagement. It really talks a lot about scaffolding. Third one is using media and technology tools. So it's less cognitive psychology and more um, adult learning theory to some extent, and course design, educational developer kind of principles. You know, we've had a good conversation here. I want to get back to the issue of video because that did come up so heavily in the first part, and then maybe I'll throw the rest of my notes out the window because that's the kind of session it's been today, but it's been a good one. You know, clearly we can think about different ways we might want to use video. One might be to you know, to develop asynchronous lectures so that I can move some of the lecture presentation outside of our Zoom session. So we've got more time in Zoom to do breakout sessions and small group activity and more, you know, active learning on the part of students. For that, you know, VoiceThread would be an excellent tool. And it's, you know, integrated into Moodle. You can take your slide decks that you would present in class and import them into VoiceThread, do the narration, do annotation to write over the slides as you're talking about them. I guess the only thing I would say about doing that when you're doing that is that it might work okay to have a slide deck that you spend 45 to 50 minutes presenting in a face-to-face class. You really probably don't want to do that for your voice threads in your online class or your remote instruction class. So take your existing slide decks and figure out, well, where are the natural breakpoints? Okay, these 5 slides kind of make up a topic. I'm going to pull them out. I'm going to do voice thread just on them. That does 2 things. I mean, students in an online situation probably don't have more than 6 to 8 minutes of concentration on a video. But the other advantage to you is that if you take your big presentations, chop them up into small presentations and do voice threads separately for them, if you decide next time you teach the course that, that third voice thread, I want to change something about it, the other four are all still fine, right? It gives you smaller, more granular pieces to work on. So that's one approach for video, or one use for video, and VoiceThread would be very useful for that. But there is a lot to say for just kind of low, super simple videos certainly for online courses, but also for our remote instruction courses. I'm planning within the next couple of days to go out to my fire pit in the backyard and record a welcome message to my students. I could certainly type out a welcome to the class, but having just a short 2-3 minute video just with this that I can post. In my case, I'm going to post it up to Flipgrid and have my students do video, introductions on Flipgrid as well. But you could also, plan to have a short 3-minute video summary each week. Okay, well, here's some of the main things we covered in our Zoom session, and I looked at our online discussion forums and the things you were submitting and the assignments, and here are a couple of important things I want you to realize that we did this week, or important things. And looking forward to next week, you've got the readings up in Moodle, and what I want you to focus on is this, because we're going to be moving on to that kind of short 2, 3, 4 minute video, just taken with your phone. It would be an excellent way to do that. Casey.
Yeah, Keith, first, just a question on exactly what you've been saying just now. And this, I really want to do exactly this kind of thing, to incorporate some short, attention span friendly videos, starting with a welcome video into each of my classes. I've never done it. And I did raise a question in the chat about it earlier, and about how to do it. Elizabeth suggested that OBS Studio, which I've never used, might be useful. However, I think it's Flower Darby and some of her colleagues who have collaborated on what I found to be the extremely useful ACUE website. They just said that the easiest way to do it is to use iMovie. And so this is either a short answer question or maybe just a question about where's the link that'll show me how to do that. Since I'm almost a complete beginner with everything having to do with computers, is there something that is already on my Macintosh in my office where I am now, by means of which A, I can record one of these short videos so that it's clear, and B, upload either the video itself into Moodle, or as some have suggested is better, upload the video into some YouTube website someplace and just put the link in Moodle. Could you?
So I put a link into the chat. We won't have time to play this, but Michael Wesch from, I think he's at Kansas State. If you're not familiar with him, go to the link to watch this Making Super Simple videos. Subscribe to his channel because he does really, really good stuff. What I'm planning to do is I have picked up a little lavalier mic. It wouldn't be necessary. I could sit out in the fire pit. I could hit record on my phone and say my 2 to 3 minute spiel. The less polished the production, the more it is going to engage your students. It's kind of counterintuitive, but do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I hate to say this in front of you, Iris, but for this kind of purpose, quick and dirty and human is what students want, right?
Yeah, yeah, I just told Casey, I have no idea how to do this, and I feel embarrassed because I'm a film person, but I know how to make a Hollywood thing, but I just think, yeah, just like this is
Yeah, so
better.
I'm going to take the video. It's going to be in my Photos app on my phone. From there, I just hit upload to YouTube, share to YouTube, and I'm a pretty open kind of person, so I put most of my stuff up as public, but you can put it up as unlisted. The biggest stumbling block for me is I hate looking and listening to myself, right? And so that's something you need to get over. But Flower Darby in her chapter said, when all of us were first in the face-to-face classroom, we probably felt very self-conscious, and we got over it, right?
Mhm.
Same thing. And so, um, I maybe I will just play the first couple of minutes of this. I know we're kind of getting a little bit over time, but I do want to introduce you to the flavor of this. Make sure I share my computer screen, sound, optimize for video clip, share, and
I love teaching out here. God, your forehead is huge. Nobody cares about what you're going to say. You're so scared you can't remember your own line.
Hi, I'm Mike
oh no.
Wesh, and I'm going to show you how to make a video for your class.
I read it. Can anybody see? You're going to help other people get over fear. Look how you're going to teach people how to make videos. You should just quit.
Hey, Weddy, come here. Come get in the YouTube video with me. What do you think about being on camera? Is it weird?
Yeah.
Why do you think it's weird?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's weird too. I'm trying to help people be less weird about it. What if you have a job someday where you have to be on camera?
I would quit that job.
All right, don't quit your job. Here are 5 reasons to get on camera and put video into your course.
We just go through
Number
these
1,
5 reasons.
because it puts more you and your you-ness into your class. And you matter more than anything. As Karen Costa says in 99 Tips for Creating Simple and Sustainable Educational Videos, more than content, more than course design, you are the factor in an online course that has the greatest potential to help your students succeed. So greet your students at the virtual door with a welcome video.
I thought it'd be cool if we all just uploaded a video to start things off.
Share something about yourself.
I love to run, but I would like to add, I also love to run with my kids.
And ask them to do the same.
You can just grab your phone like this, just list these 3 things that you love to do.
Number 2, it helps build relationships.
Hello, World Religions class.
As the videos came in, I didn't care if they had bad lighting or stumbled over their words now and then.
Me and my roommates just recently got a cat.
I am a 24th year senior.
I really like to eat, but that's not really interesting.
I wasn't just talking to a camera anymore. I was talking to real people.
Loved the introductions you guys posted. We have so many different perspectives and talents.
Number 3, use videos to validate and motivate students.
Did you guys see Sarah's post on this?
Mention great comments and celebrate great work.
You guys might have seen Taylor had a really interesting experience.
Offer quick words of encouragement.
Hey guys, I know this week is super hard.
The good news is I love to help people. If you need some help, just reach out. Number 4, it'll save you time. A simple weekly overview video of big points and videos that clarify assignment expectations allows students to get onto the questions that really matter. And you can also make short explainer videos that answer any frequently asked questions about particular concepts or ideas. Number 5, implicit messaging. Video is a great way to get across the most important lessons of a class, the lessons that are better shown than said.
If you're just hanging out with people just like you can't grow, you can't stretch yourself.
I just want to show you guys you can work it into your life, that you can work learning into your life.
So here's a setup that
Most of the videos
uses.
you just saw are what I call super simple videos, or what...
And so I'll pause at that. Hopefully that's enough of a teaser to get you interested in watching the rest. Clearly, the video he's got up on making super simple videos is not exactly a super simple video, because obviously he's editing things together. He's putting up labels and so forth, and he doing voiceover. Yeah. So I mean, clearly he can do more than the super simple video, but start off. I mean, in terms of keep it simple, start off with camera, hit record, talk about welcome to the class, stop, post it. And then, and Casey, if you've got it up on your YouTube channel, if you want it as unlisted, put it up as unlisted. That means no one will find it in a search. But then when you link to it in a Moodle page, whether it is a course announcement, if you link to the video there, or if you are setting up a page in your Moodle course that says, start here, welcome to the course, and you link to your video on that page, and then have on the rest of the page, here's how the course can be organized, all that text and so forth. But if you link to the YouTube video at the top, then Moodle will automatically embed your video at the top of your page in Moodle. You don't have to do anything. All you do is link to the Moodle page. Moodle will do the work, and there is you at the top of the page, staring out from the camera, talking to your students, saying, "Welcome to the class. Here's what the class is going to be about." So yeah, super simple video. I like the 5 points that he went through in terms of engaging with the class, directing them in terms of what was going to be coming up, explaining more complex concepts, highlighting student work. That was I really liked that. Hey everyone, did you see what Susan said on the discussion forum, and so forth. So that all of those are ways to really kind of keep our students engaged. I'm going to have to do that because my class is fully online. For those of you who are teaching remote, you do have those Zoom sessions where you're getting together each week, but as probably many of you had the experience in the spring, it's very easy. If all you're doing is those Zoom sessions, it's very easy for some students to kind of float away, right? And so the more we can do to keep the students engaged, I think the better. Casey, or anyone, if you have a Google account, you have a YouTube account, you have a YouTube channel, right? So if you log into your Gmail and then go over to YouTube, you should see your little Google avatar, there at the top of the screen. Actually, here I can show you. So let me actually go into, I'm actually switched over to our TLTC account in Chrome here, but if I go over to Safari, I think I'm in YouTube as myself. Because if I went to Google, and instead of just doing a search right away, you can see that I'm logged in. This is my Google account. It takes me to the search, it takes me to my Gmail, although I've got other ways of doing that, to my Google News page, but also YouTube. And so, if you look at your YouTube account through Google, you have your channel. You have you can upload video from your computer, but if I'm taking the video on my phone is also, even though it's an iPhone, all of my Google apps on my iPhone are logged into my Google account, and if I upload from photos or from the camera app to YouTube, share to YouTube, it's going to go up to my YouTube channel, which in the case of my account, it's more focused on you know, a lot of my geology presentations and so forth. I used to publish all of the TLTC videos to my personal YouTube account, but we've gotten better at actually putting them up into our YouTube channel. So that's overtime again, but I mean, hopefully people found this to be a good conversation. I will stop the recording and we will be officially